I am here very, very pleased to be with Soraya Sheppard, Executive Director of Color Me Africa Fine Arts, a nonprofit organization centered on creating an awareness of African visual artists in the U.S. and Canada. How are you today, Soraya?
I'm absolutely wonderful. And how are you?
Doing very, very well. Always happy to be joined with amazing leaders that have started organizations to raise awareness about things that they're passionate about. Tell me a little bit about yourself, how you started Color Me Africa, and your background. You have an amazing origin story, like background story that I was reading on the website, and I want the listeners to hear because it's not every day you get to speak to somebody who, immigrated from Africa during apartheid. So it's really, really cool to get to speak with you.
Thank you so much. Yep. So I was born and raised in Johannesburg, South Africa, during apartheid. And, we went through a really terrible time experiencing real oppression. And real segregation. Now, one would look at me and say, well, what are you? Because you're not Black, and I'm certainly not white. And that was always this dichotomy we were living with. There were those of us, much like in the United States, where people look lighter skinned. And, but my background is my great-grandmother was a Black woman. My mother was mixed with German and Black. And that's how this gene pool shifted over time. But in South Africa, if you had any kind of percentage of Black, you were considered non-white. And you bore the brunt of the laws that were created to oppress you, to segregate you, to subjugate you, to deny you from all the wonders of what's possible for any human being. And those were just basic human things. As I grew up, I really became aware that I'm living in a society of separate people. And, you would learn that you can't go there. You're not allowed to go there. You can't live in that place. You aren't allowed to go to university. Or you're not paid, or, you read the paper and you find out it's for whites only jobs. Non-whites need not apply. You'd see that written in the newspaper.
If you let me just intervene. So what would that do for you growing up, knowing that there were these ceilings that you would never be able to get past? Like, no matter how far you push yourself, there are these regulations in place that are there to literally prevent you from moving up in the world. How did that affect you growing up?
Well, there's a lot of depression, a lot of self-hate, anger, resentment, just a lot of emotional unsettledness. And you see people who are white are doing all these things that you would hope to do, would dream to do, but you'd never be able to. And you don't realize that it's not, when you're young, you don't realize it's because of what the law says. You begin to believe that it's because of your race.
How you were born.
You were born not to do those things. You were born not to have those things. You were born not to be bright.
That is traumatic. That is that crushes motivation.
Right? And it literally had you believe my race is because I'm this race, therefore I can't. Therefore I won't even try. And I had the nerve to love art and want to pursue the creative fields, but there was no outlet for me. They did not teach art in the schools because they had a special education for people of color. And I would say non-whites, but I hate that word because those are the words that were created by the oppressor. So for example, I wanted to do fashion designing. And I went to school in Pretoria, which is sort of like the racist capital of the country at the time. And I was told, you can't come here. You're not allowed to come here.
Wow.
And it crushed me. I didn't even know. No one prepared me for such a response.
That's horrible.
So it just kind of left you with very few options in life.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the options, unfortunately, women would get married, they drop out of school, and the conversations were, what's the point? Even if you finish high school, you're still going to earn a menial wage.
Of course.
Or there's nothing else you can do.
Yeah, you'll become so unmotivated.
Right. And so, the guys turn to drugs like you see happening here.
Mm-hmm.
Women dropped out of school, got married, or got pregnant young.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's not the life you want.
No.
But what are your options? Or you end up being forced into marriage because, it's economically better for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you live this life of being forced into, but never really visualizing, creating from within, or ever believing that you can fulfill a dream that you have.
Wow.
And so I was fortunate enough to be able to leave South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
I always had this dream of leaving South Africa to move to the United States ever since I was a child, because somehow there's a place called America where dreams can be fulfilled. And that was always in the movies, in articles you read. And I remember a song that my mom would play, and it's called What a Wonderful World.
Uh-huh.
And the words of that song was like, I could hear the birds, and I could, people saying, how do you do? And like, I was a little girl and she would sing this while she's baking. And it's just like, where is this place they're talking about, And then when I did finally get the opportunity to travel, that was during apartheid. And that was during my activism years.
How old were you, if you don't mind me asking?
My very first trip out of South Africa was I used to go to Mozambique regularly as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mozambique was colonized by the Portuguese. However, it was a lot more liberated than South Africa. Mm-hmm. Black and white were mixing, they were marrying, they were dating, you could eat anywhere, you could live anywhere. And it was a colony, and it did have its own oppression, but we didn't see it.
Mm-hmm.
But not the same version of it.
Yeah.
So anytime we would go there, it was like a world opened up. And then anytime we would go back, it was like the gates were shutting, to this other life. And but that was our escape. And it's a 6, 7, 8 hour drive, and then you're in a free land almost,
Yeah. And do you think that made you like angry towards South Africa, knowing like, why is my home like this?
Viciously angry.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up I was an angry child.
I can imagine.
I was, and ironically, when in my 20s, I met a friend of mine. Now, not some of us, but many of those who looked like complected took advantage of that by playing white. Mm-hmm. And they went to places that ordinarily they would not have been able to go to because of their complexion. So a friend of mine invited me to a music festival. And this was an all-white music festival. And I was so nervous because I'd never been in an ocean of white people.
Wow,
and I was so interesting. Scared that they would know that I'm not, and they would ask me to leave.
But you are very light-skinned. Like, right? You would think that you just tanned, that you got a good tan that day.
No, but when you live among your own, your brain is programmed to think you look like everyone else. Mm-hmm. Right? So I went to this festival, and everyone was like, oh, wow, she's so beautiful. Who is she? And I gave call yourself Sue, because you don't want them to know.
By your name, Soraya.
Yeah, that they would know you're not supposed to be there. Mm-hmm. And so I was Sue for the day. And at some point, this one young woman befriended me, and she kept staring at me, and she decided she needed to get to know me. Mm-hmm. And so the friend who took me there was having such a good time. He got so drunk, he passed out. And she said, well, I can't obviously let you go home with him. We need to take you home. But now I need to tell her I live in a non-white neighborhood.
Oh my God, that is And what did you do? What did you do?
I said, I didn't tell her where I lived. She said, come with us to a party.
Okay.
So I said, okay. And this was an all-white party. And I was so nervous. I was shy. I was withdrawn. And all I wanted to do was leave. And I don't drink and I don't smoke weed. And everybody's getting high and everything. And at some point she said, I tell you what, why don't you stay at my place? I'll take you home tomorrow. And I'm still not telling her where I live. So now I'm staying in a white woman's apartment. Under South African law, that's illegal.
Wow.
Because there is a law called the Group Areas Act. Mm-hmm. I would have to get permission from a police station to be in her neighborhood. Oh, now I'm sleeping in her house. And then that same night, I spoke to her and I said, listen, my name is Soraya and I'm Indian mix and I live in this area. She was blown away. She was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. She was so sad. I was surprised. She was feeling so terrible. And then she took me home and met my mom and my family, and we became friends, and we've been friends to this day.
Wow. That really, those laws are so depressing when you hear stories like that, because it's like past the skin color. Once you get to know somebody, like it doesn't matter what their skin color is. It's just if their personality is good, and these laws literally prevent you from meeting other people like that you could have an amazing friendship with. So that story is both inspiring and makes me sad because of the stupid laws that were created at that time.
And that it was the beginning of like my experience of what it's like to live in a South Africa where they have all these privileges. Mm-hmm. And then she got to learn to look at what it's like to be in my world where there were none.
Yeah, wow. And two societies right there.
We went through this incredible story. Now we really do have a story as friends that we have yet to talk about. Fast forward, I wanted to get out. I got so restless. She was able to fulfill on my dream. I wanted to be a flight attendant because I knew I'd get out. Mm-hmm. But they wouldn't allow me to because I was non-white. Mm-hmm. And so she would travel the world and come and tell me about the world. And all I could do was listen.
Wow, that's depressing.
And then one day I met someone, we fell in love, and he wanted to travel. And that's how I started to see the world.
Nice.
And it was from that moment I realized, I remember my very first visit to London, and I saw white people sweeping streets, or white people picking up garbage, or going to a restaurant and there's a white woman sitting in the bathroom giving you a tissue, or giving you, like you never saw white people in those positions.
Yeah.
And that blew me away. And I'm like, I want more. I want to see more, and I was fortunate enough to travel so much and for so long around the world. By 1976, I had become this political person. 76, 87, from 76 to 87, actually. I just became so political, and I knew I needed to help do something about this country. Mm-hmm. And what I did was just really educate people, because we had censorship in the country. So all those trips abroad allowed me to bring in what the government deemed as subversive material. Mm-hmm. And I would bring video footage, and I would bring, photographs, and I would show in small groups what is happening in South Africa. Mm-hmm. And that opened many people's eyes, but I also stood the risk of somebody telling on me. Mm-hmm. And we would just have to hide whatever we were showing, and we would just, separate and blah, blah, blah. And there just came a point, I remember reading in the paper that there came a time where I moved into a building, for example, but the person who I rented it from was a lawyer friend.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, look, I know you guys have housing issues. I needed to live closer to work. And he said, you can rent my place, sublet it from me.
Mm-hmm.
But then while I was there, I had a plumbing issue and I went to the caretaker and she said, what are you doing there? You're not supposed to be there.
Mm-hmm.
You know it's illegal. I'm going to have to call the police on you. And I said, okay, I'll be out. She said, you got 24 hours. So that was again breaking that law.
Mm-hmm.
I eventually discovered the following morning early that there was a Indian gentleman with his friend living in the penthouse, and found out he's the owner and he lives there. And I did what I had to do to meet him. And I said to him, you know what, if I move, you move, and the doctor moves. And I never heard from them again. Then I literally let them know that this ain't gonna happen. And what I did then was I asked all my friends who were struggling for housing to find a white friend who would lease it and sublet it. And by the time I left that building, it was about 60% people of color.
Wow. So you've been doing work like this for a long time.
Yes.
Mm.
And then I ended up looking for another place because now I need more space. I have a dog and I'm feeling all this power. And I picked up the phone one day and I saw this beautiful, wonderful townhouse. And I said to the guy, listen, I'd like to rent it, but I'm not going to rent it in a white name. Can I have it on my name? And he said, sure.
Oh, so things were starting to get a little
starting to
better?
change.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So this was the gray area. People were starting to move into these gray areas. And then I remember reading the Sunday paper one morning and the government was saying, you need to start reporting these people.
You started to crack down on it.
That day I said, I'm getting out.
Mm-hmm.
I can't raise my kids here. I can't live here. It's killing me.
No matter how much work you put into it, it was still an uphill battle.
Yes. So I left. And I came to this country knowing that I wanted to do something with my life. But then I realized wanting freedom and knowing how to live in freedom was a very different thing. Like I had to learn to be free.
Oh, can you tell me about that? Because that's something I never really thought about, having to learn to be free.
When you've been raised in an oppressed society and subjugated for so long, and listen, it was just I was 27 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
My formidable years and all of those years after that was only knowing oppression and restrictions and not even knowing myself. Mm-hmm. And the journey from having to uncover that has been a very long journey, and I'm talking years. And this is through many kinds of modalities. And I'll tell you, being able to just know it's okay to move about freely, to get on a bus with anybody and everybody, to sit next to people who are white and all colors, to eat in restaurants. I mean, even that was we couldn't eat in restaurants. To think for myself and be able to create what I want and trust that what I'm thinking and wanting to create is good for me. Because you were always told what to do and how to think. And it was, I'm writing a book about that journey. Yeah. So it was very, very painful to unravel apartheid in my brain. And what the bottom line is that I discovered that I was a victim and lived life from a place of victimization. And because they were the victimizers, just were like, I am victim.
Yeah, that's all you can think.
It is. You don't know any other way to think. And then discovering my voice and discovering my power, discovering my humanity, discovering just the beauty of what I experience, and that I no longer have to live there, and that I can actually be a force for healing and a force for transformation. And that led me to wanting to do something for the country that I knew I could contribute in some way. And art spoke to me. My son is an artist. He's a visual artist. I was an artist. I never got to express it professionally. So I wanted to work with these artists. And so I visited to South Africa in 2011. I was in a coffee shop waiting on a friend, and they had a pop-up show in this really fancy mall, outdoorsy mall. And I struck up a conversation with the guy who was managing this pop-up. He's an artist from Zimbabwe. And I looked at the work and I'm like, oh my, this is beautiful. And just, you know, I've always traveled and always bought art. And so our home was like a big art gallery, you know, just art everywhere. So I realized, I've never seen such gorgeous pieces. How much are they? And he showed me, and then he said to me, but don't buy those, because the guy who owns these pieces is a dealer in diamonds, and he deals art. But what they do is they go to the townships and they'll buy the art for next to nothing. And you'll see those prices there because they are marketing it to tourists.
Wow. So it's just taking advantage of because these artists who actually make them have no other outlet where to present it or how to sell it.
The language to speak about it. You know, they don't speak English. They just create.
So there's a lot of dealers that take advantage of that and then resell it to tourists, because tourists think that they're buying something genuinely from Africa and supporting the culture without knowing what these dealers are doing.
Right. So it touched a nerve for me, because when I was young, I did modeling, a few years of that, trying it out. And I was always placed with the white crowd because of my complexion. But they knew I wasn't. But I had a look they wanted. And I was very oblivious to how things worked. I was young and naive. And I often didn't get paid for the work. And I remember sitting in a hair salon for a shoot I did. I got some small amount of money, but I was so happy to be chosen. That often happened to us, that you just accept what they give you. And I remember sitting in a hair salon waiting to get my hair done, and I'm looking at this woman at the magazine up, and I see my face
on a magazine.
On a magazine, and I never got paid for that.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was a top name company, a very top brand in the country, and even probably it was a European company. Now I know if a white person had done a shoot that, and they had a modeling agency where they worked through this, I was just discovered. Oh my God, you've got the perfect look for this. So that was what I recalled, and I said, you know what? I want to know who these guys are, and I want to know how they operate. And I got to know them, and I got to know how they operate. And when I went to their space, they had the guy by his own admission said, we've been collecting for 15 years. We've got about 25,000 pieces rolled up. And most of it are from the apartheid era. And that just broke my heart, because these artists I know died poor. Yeah. Or I know died unknown. And then as I got to know some of the more of how they operate, then I researched some of the artists in the collection they sent to me, and I discovered, I found these artists, I tracked them down, and they started to tell me their stories. And I actually engaged the guy, and I said to him, I would love for you to do a project with you, and if you bring some art to the United States, we'd like to exhibit them. And he thought he found his contact to bring work here. What he didn't realize is I had engaged the South African government to work with me because I shared the story with them.
Mhm.
And we brought art from the apartheid era and art from post-apartheid
Mhm.
to show the work and share that story. And when he heard what I was doing, they backed off.
Mhm.
And then it started to just unravel. So what I did with the work is I actually used that as seed money to create Color Me Africa Fine Arts.
Mm.
And to build the story on those. And so subsequently, the artists that I featured, some of the work that I had, we were able to bring one of those artists from a township, living out of a shack,
Mhm.
no lights, no water. I have images of where he lives. I got him to get his passport. I coached him on how to do that, how to get a visa. 3 times he got declined by the embassy because in his broken English, he said, I'm going to work there. Not the thing you want to say to an embassy official.
No.
So I finally got our senator's office to help me. This is an exhibition. They'll be in and out.
Mhm.
He got his visa. He had never left his township. We put him on a plane. We picked him up in a limo, put him in one of the best hotels on Michigan Avenue in Chicago, and took him to a show in Chicago.
What a life-changing event. Did he speak English?
No, not much.
Oh my God. What a life-changing experience.
But fortunately for him, he was traveling with another artist who had done some traveling. So I selected her to come with him. We were funded by the government. And we had 2 South Africans who live here, one in LA and one in New York. And so they all converged on Chicago. And we had 4 South African artists, my first ever sort of international project getting funded and all of that. And it was celebrating the 20th. It was celebrating our 20 years of democracy.
Wow.
So there we were. And he literally has gone from that artist who nobody really knew much about to going back to South Africa, and now he's in galleries.
Oh my God, amazing. You changed his life. You literally changed his whole life.
And then and it has expanded since. So that is just one example of what's possible. And what really bothered me about that whole incident with the dealer was they've been exploiting South Africans for as long as forever. Now we have a democracy and we still have this problem. Mm-hmm. So apparently the guy shut his business down, sold the collection to somebody foreign, and no longer does business. And then we discovered another one like that, and that too got shut down. No. So that was the intent, and we accomplished that. So where are we now? We're 501c3, mm-hmm. and our mission is to educate, inspire, uplift, and bring artists and support and sponsor and exhibit works by artists that you would never get to see, you'll never get to know unless we bring them here. Mm-hmm. And also we will be able to go and develop them further so they too can grow and become Picassos of the world.
Amazing. And I read on your website that it's a touring platform. So you bring these shows globally and you expose people to these diverse African cultures. What is like the reception when people go to these shows and maybe they've never seen South African art or they've never heard like a story as powerful as this? What's the general reception that you get when you throw these exhibits?
So our last show, we had 14 artists, mm-hmm. a very diverse group, men, women, age-wise and gender and race, mm-hmm. and in New York. And I have to tell you, blew people away. I mean, they kept coming. They had never seen this type of work. When they think of Africa, they don't get to see that side of Africa. It's often poverty, it's often corruption and crime and sort of the dark continent, which is why when you see our logo, it's this bright, beautiful, colorful continent, because I'm an African. I look and sound like this. And there are many of us that look like this, and we love our Africa. Africa lives in us all, whites alike. It doesn't leave you, and no matter where you go. And so, you know, when people came, they were like just blown away. And I know people who are in the arts at maybe high levels or from institutions, they came to the show and they were like, wow, we've never seen anything like this. Please do more like this. We see the same old, same old, same old. This was sort of like a fresh breath of air for them. Wow. So I know that we are, and when we say touring platform, we plan on having our own gallery space. This ends the fundraising period for us. Giving Tuesday kicks off today. So please support Color Me Africa Fine Arts so we can bring more of those wonderful works, wonderful opportunities for you to meet the artists. We don't just want to bring art. We want the artists here. We want to share their rich stories. We want their voices heard. And by the way, the guy who couldn't speak English now learns to speak very good English, by the way. So that inspired him to go and develop himself further. People want to have a piece of that, you know, in their homes, and the prices ranges from $300 to $3,000 and up. But there's something affordable for everyone to have, and it's very personal, and you will not believe the lives you touch when you do this. African art is on fire right now. And it's, I think Africa definitely is the future. And I made a decision that this is my life's work and I'm going to see it through. So we will have a gallery in Chicago, hopefully by the end of this year.
Wow, amazing. Thank you. Like that's really beautiful that you provide opportunities for the people that in a home, your home, somewhere where you grew up angry, rightfully so, because of the things that were around you, things that you couldn't control, and you still decided to go back there and provide more opportunities and to uplift your people. So that's really incredible work that you're doing. What do you see in the future for Color Me Africa? What do you hope to have, like, let's say 5 years from now? Where do you see the organization?
Well, wow. So we are now also registered as a nonprofit in South Africa, and we plan to have our own gallery there. And the space there would provide us with a platform to continue to harvest new talent from the rest of the continent, to source them, and to create those, use art as a platform for healing, for engaging each other. On the continent, there's a lot of xenophobia that happened in South Africa because we had such a huge influx of immigrants who fled their countries to come to South Africa when we opened to this new democracy. What I see in 5 years, I see our presence in all of the major shows around the world. You know, a demand for the talent that we have to be featured, to have a footprint in in all these major cities of the United States, Canada, Latin America, South America, and for artists to know that there's a place that they will be respected, protected, and nurtured.
Beautiful.
And that their dreams can be fulfilled. And really, more than anything, for a young Soraya that could wish she had seen an organization that said, go ahead, paint, create, believe, because there is a place for you when you're ready. I have my youngest artist. He is superbly talented, coming out of Cape Town. He's only 12. You must see the work he creates. And so I mean, he's looking at Soraya. Soraya is going to take this and help us do this. So, you know, I'm a mother for grown-ups. I only know how to mother. These are like my kids, and they give me the reason I wake up in the morning. And
Wow.
And more importantly, I did meet Nelson Mandela. I had the distinct privilege of meeting him.
I was just going to ask you, I was like, I can't end this interview without talking about this. You told me this on the phone. You got the chance to meet him. What was that like, that experience?
Okay. So I was actually at the time living in, so when I left the country, I said to my mom, I'm not coming back until Nelson Mandela is a free man. I worked in the Free Nelson Mandela campaign. A lot of my friends were arrested, many of which just disappeared. And we fought hard for his release. And then we realized it's not going to happen. But I left the country saying, if he's not coming home, I'm not coming home. Mm-hmm. The day he was released, this was 6 years after I had left the country, hadn't returned. I'm living in Panama, Central America, and my husband says to me, turn on the TV. And there's Nelson Mandela walking out of prison. And I'm bawling my eyes out. And I'm ready to go home because I had I've been away for 6 years, right? So while I was still, in Panama, we have a house in DC that I'm managing. I took a trip to DC and I called my friends at the embassy, still under the older apartheid, but they knew us. And they said to me, Nelson Mandela is here. I said, oh, well, I have to see him. They said he's going to be meeting with all the exiles in a hotel in the city. And I said, I have to be there. They said, so they got me a police, State Department clearance.
Wow.
And I did get to see. And so we were a handful of us. And we discussed the future of the country. And we all had to declare to him our promise to go back and help rebuild our country.
And you are fulfilling that promise.
And I said, I will do that. I can't promise when, but I will do that. So I did not know at the time what it would be, but everything I did was to develop myself and to grow and become so that I can actually do it. Mm-hmm. But I was restless because I was a mom, and then I did this and everything I was doing was not giving me the freedom to go. Mm-hmm. So when the market tanked in 2011, I was in real estate and I lost everything. I lost my homes and my money and all that. And I said, it's a perfect time to go home. Mm. And it was during that period when I discovered, a week before I left the country, a year later, literally 1 year of discovering New South Africa, a week before I'm about to get on a plane, I discovered this pop-up art show. And in that moment, I made that choice. This is the path I'm taking. Mm-hmm. And I never looked back. And so I keep a photo of Nelson Mandela near and dear to me so I can remember what I promised him, no matter how hard it's going to get. And believe me, it's been very tough financially. I'm starting with not a dime, a little tablet, a little phone in a coffee shop. Using the internet, I started there.
And look at, wow.
And I just kept going, not knowing how I was going to get to the next day, if I'm going to pay my telephone bill, if I'm going to eat. I have to do this. If it's going to happen, it's going to happen now. I don't know how, but I'm going to keep going. And I just kept going.
Wow. And like the experience you had growing up where things weren't available for you, resources weren't available for you because of how you were born. Now knowing, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to do it because it can be done. There's nothing stopping me. That has to be such a huge motivator. Like it's such a beautiful story. It really is. Like
I'm just thinking about it now because I haven't really taken the time to, and the crazy thing is I was given by the mayor of Chicago a resolution honoring or acknowledging or whatever, a proclamation the work that Color Me Africa is doing for artists. Like, who does that?
Amazing. And before we end this interview, can you tell me a little bit about the two pieces you have behind you? Because they are beautiful and so eye-catching and vibrant.
Thank you. So that young guy is my mascot.
Mm-hmm.
I saw an image. I saw that image on Facebook, and I'm like, oh my God, who is the art? And I met all these artists really from seeing the images on Facebook. And I'm like, I got to know you, and I've got to know you. So this piece here, the Thinking Boy is his name, and I fell in love with him, and I met the artist because of him, and she's one of my best friends now. Turns out she's a white South African. And at the beginning of our journey, we were only focusing on Black South Africans, but I moved away from that conversation to include all South Africans, and because that's the future. And when I brought her to the New York show, now she painted that. No, she gave me that as a gift because that was the beginning of our story together. She's an incredible, her name is Leoda Conrad. She is a brilliant artist. Her father was an artist. This lady is incredibly generous and kind and nurturing and does so much for the community. And I realized that I discovered a true gem when I met her. And my promise to her is that we will do a solo show at our gallery when we open. And I have another woman here with the trees. She is actually an Indian woman, Premila. And you'll hear all these exotic names around Color Me Africa because they're from all over. Premila lived in Africa for many years and moved back to India, but Africa never left her. Mm-hmm. All of her landscapes are of the African continent. And she does a series in just trees, and they are absolutely outstanding. And you'll see more of her work on the website. And then her name is Nobu Kosi. This artist is from Zimbabwe. Mm-hmm. And, I worked with the Harlem Fine Art Show, and the guy asked me if he could take this piece and sell it for us in New York. They came to Chicago. He actually ran off with that piece. And I went after him, and I used ABC 7 on your side. He took off with 2 pieces. And
he just took them?
He just took them and he just never sent them back. And because we exposed him in the news and we went through all kinds of channels, this piece got returned to us, partially damaged, but she came home.
Wow.
So we deal with that too here. Mm-hmm. We trusted him by being in his big show at the Harlem Fine Art Show in Harlem at the Riverside Church. And the same thing happened to my guy who came out of the townships. He took a piece from him and never paid him and sold it for $12,000. Never paid him. So that's happening here too with artists, and I'm told in a very big way.
Wow, that's horrible because artists put so much work into these just to have them stolen by someone who didn't do anything other than just resell it. Really horrible.
Yep, and that really the work you'll see a lot more on the website and of course on our Instagram, and hopefully we could create a video for you.
Yeah, tell everyone where they can.
Okay, so you can go to www.colormeafricafinearts.com and take a look. And then we also have our Facebook page, Color Me Africa Fine Arts, on Instagram as well as on Facebook.
Amazing. And if you're ever back in New York, please let me know, because me and my wife, we love art shows, we love museums, we love art, and I would love to meet you in person. You've done such amazing work. Just hearing your story has been truly inspiring. It's made me want to go do art right now after we get off of this. And I love, like it also makes me want to go to Africa, like just the colors, the culture. I imagine it's super beautiful and the people are very warm there.
Beautiful people, wonderful weather, great food, and with the current economy, It's going to be a steal to travel there. The landscape, I mean, I after being for a whole year back home after 25 years in 2011, I knew that my life would never be settled if I cut South Africa off completely.
No, and I'm glad you didn't. Never forget your roots.
I reached back home, and I've been sort of narrowing that gap. And now I'm in a business that allows me to talk. I literally stay up until 3 to talk to my South Africa team. And then I work with my Chicago team, and I get the best of both worlds. And I get to talk to my son there. He's a brilliant artist. He's American born, but loves it there, and he won't come back. And, you know, it is a place that you cannot not go to. You just have to. Wow.
Well, I can't wait to go there, and hopefully I get to meet you one day, and I get to go to one of the galleries and the art shows, and really, really thank you. Like, this was a truly inspiring interview. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.